Welcome back, friends. Tonight, I've got a story for you. And this one stayed with me for a long time. And I want you to know, everything I'm about to tell you is true. In November 2004, a man named Peter Porco didn't show up for work. When someone went to check on him, what they found inside that house on Brockley Drive was something nobody in that quiet little town of Delmar, New York, was ever going to forget. But that's not even the strangest part of this story. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. You know how some mornings feel the same? Nothing special about them. You wake up, maybe you pour yourself a coffee, you think about what you got to get done. That's how it was for Chris Bodish on November 15th, 2004. A Monday. Cold. The way November gets up in that part of New York. Just another day going through the motions. He was a detective with the Bethlehem Police. Had been for a while. Good man, steady. The kind of guy who doesn't rattle easily. But that Monday morning, word came in, and nothing after that was ordinary. A man named Peter Porco hadn't shown up for work. Now, Peter was a law clerk. And I mean the kind of man who showed up every single day without fail. Rain, snow, didn't matter. So when he didn't show, people noticed pretty fast. They sent a court officer out to the house to check on him. Guy by the name of Michael Hart. He drove over to Brockley Drive, knocked on the door, and what he found inside, well, he didn't hesitate. He called it in right away, and that call eventually found its way to Bodish. Delmar is one of those places where nothing much happens. Nice streets, quiet. People know each other. Look out for each other. You don't move to Delmar because you're worried about something. You move there because you're not. Bodish pulled up to 36 Brockley Drive. He went inside, and whatever he thought he was walking into that Monday morning, it wasn't anything like this. Peter Porco was 52 years old. He was a law clerk for an appeals court judge up in Albany. Steady job. Respected man. The kind of guy who packed his lunch the night before and never missed a day without calling ahead. He and his wife Joan had lived on Brockley Drive for years. Nice house, quiet street, couple of oak trees out front. A place you raise a family without worry. Joan was a speech pathologist, worked with kids. By all accounts, she was warm, the kind of person people gravitated toward. She and Peter had been together a long time. 2 sons, Jonathan, the older one, and Christopher, who was 21 and away at university in Rochester. From the outside looking in, this was just a normal family. I mean, they had their problems, but who hasn't? That Monday morning, Peter got up like he always did. He went to the bathroom, packed his lunch, started loading the dishwasher. At some point, he sat down and wrote out a check for Christopher, as it happens to cover a parking ticket. Just a small thing. The kind any decent father does without thinking twice about it. Then he went outside to get the newspaper, the door locked behind him. He found the spare key. They kept one hidden. Let himself back in and came inside. And that was the last anyone really knows about Peter Porco's morning. Because by the time someone came looking for him a few hours later, the house on Brockley Drive was never going to be the same again. Christopher was 21 years old. He was away at university, the University of Rochester, about 3.5 hours from home. Tall kid. Good looking. He was the kind of kid everybody would notice when he walked into a room. He drove a bright yellow Jeep Wrangler. You couldn't miss it if you tried. His friends up at Rochester liked him well enough. He was easy to be around, easy to talk to. He'd mention his family from time to time, said they had money, real estate, vacation homes, that kind of thing. Nobody really questioned it. Lots of kids paint a bigger picture of themselves when they're away from home for the first time. He and his parents stayed in touch. Joan especially. She was warm that way, kept the lines open. Peter was a bit more reserved, but he was involved, paid attention, asked questions. Christopher was just a young guy figuring things out. And honestly, most of it was true, just not all of it. His grades hadn't been good for a while. He'd been struggling more than he let anyone know. And at the end of 2003, the university decided they'd seen enough. Christopher was asked to leave. Come back when things are better sorted. He didn't tell his parents. What he told them instead was that a professor had lost one of his final exams. The university felt bad about it, and as a way of making things right, they were going to cover his tuition when he came back the following year. It was a good story, enough detail to sound real, and Peter and Joan believed him. Well, because he was their son. You don't expect that from your own kid. So, Christopher needed money to go back. Tuition, rent, living expenses, none of it was free, and he didn't have it. So he took out a loan, a big one, $31,000, and on the paperwork where it asked for a cosigner, he put down his father's name. Peter had no idea. The Jeep was the same story. That bright yellow Wrangler didn't come free either. He'd opened up a line of credit for that too, and again, his father's name was there on the forms without Peter ever agreeing to any of it. For a while, nothing happened. Christopher was back at Rochester, driving around in his Jeep, and his parents back home in Delmar thought his tuition was being covered by the university. No reason to think otherwise. But Peter was a careful man. And sometime that fall, something started bothering him. Just a feeling at first, a number that didn't sit right. Something that didn't quite line up when he thought about it. So he started making some calls, and on November 4th, 11 days before that Monday morning, Peter sat down and wrote his son an email. He'd found out about the loan, the real amount, and he was not happy about it. He wrote, "Did you forge my signature as a co-signer? What the hell are you doing? I'm calling Citibank this morning to find out what you've done." Christopher wrote back the same day, cool as anything, said the loan would only end up being $2,000. The $31,000 was just a ceiling. It wasn't going to be that much, don't worry about it. Peter wasn't buying it. The next day, he found out about the Jeep. Another loan. His name on it again. He wrote one more email, less angry, more worn out. He said, "If you abuse my credit again, I'll have no choice but to file forgery affidavits." And then right at the end he wrote, "We may be disappointed in you, but your mother and I still love you and care about your future." After that, Christopher just went quiet. Stopped picking up the phone, no emails, nothing. Until November 9th, just after 1 in the morning, one last message. He was sorry for going quiet. Things were actually going well, he said. For the first time, he felt like he really had a handle on things. Peter Porco never wrote back. 6 days later, he didn't show up for work. On Sunday evening, November 14th, at 10:30 that night, 4 security cameras picked up a yellow car pulling out of the university parking lot. Bright yellow Jeep Wrangler, hard to miss even on a dark night. About 15 minutes later, at a toll booth just outside Rochester, a collector took payment from a young man in a yellow Jeep. Cash, not Easy Pass the way most people pay, just cash handed through the window, and Christopher's Easy Pass, that little tag that normally sat right there on his windshield, well, that night it was tucked underneath one of the seats. The Jeep headed east toward Albany, 232 miles, about 3.5 hours down the thruway, and just before 2 in the morning, a toll collector in Albany remembered a yellow Jeep coming through fast. Heading into the city, Brockley Drive is about 20 minutes from there. Peter and Joan were asleep. Before we go any further, we need to go back to that Monday morning. Remember when I told you how Peter got up, packed his lunch, loaded the dishwasher, wrote that check for Christopher, went outside to get the newspaper, locked himself out, found the spare key? Well, I didn't tell you everything. When Peter got up that morning and walked to the bathroom, he noticed some blood in the sink. Just a few drops. He grabbed some tissues and tried to wipe it away. It smeared across the porcelain but didn't really come clean, so he just left the tissues there and went downstairs. He packed his lunch, unloaded the dishwasher, wrote out that check, made out to Christopher for a parking ticket. There were blood trails through the whole house. Peter Porco had been struck in the head with an axe 16 times during the night, and he got up the next morning and made his lunch. The doctor said later that what happened to Peter was extraordinarily rare. His body just kept going. Whatever the brain does when it can't process what's happened to it, that's what happened. He moved through his morning like it was any other morning. Bathroom, kitchen, lunch, check. And then he went outside to get the newspaper and the front door locked behind him. And he found the spare key and let himself back in. And at some point after that, his body finally gave out. Michael Hart found the front door slightly open when he arrived. The key still in the lock, blood on the front steps. Peter was at the bottom of the stairs. And upstairs in the bedroom, Joan was still in bed. She'd been hit 3 times. Her jaw was broken. She'd lost an eye. The damage to her skull was deep enough that it had reached her brain. But she was alive, and she was conscious. Detective Chris Bodish was still at the house when they brought Joan out on the stretcher. He'd seen the bedroom. He'd seen what had been done to her, and somehow she was still alive, breathing, conscious, her one remaining eye open. He walked alongside the stretcher before they loaded her into the ambulance. He needed to ask her something. He knew it wasn't the right moment. There probably wasn't going to be a right moment, so he just asked. He asked her if she knew who did this. Joan looked at him, and then he asked, "Was it Christopher?" She nodded, up and down, slowly but clearly, yes. Bodish said later he couldn't believe what he was seeing. A woman with that level of injury, barely clinging on, and she still had the strength to answer him. They took her to the hospital after that, and then, days later, when Joan had stabilized enough to talk, she said she didn't remember any of it. Not the attack, not the ambulance, not the question Bodish asked her, and not the answer she gave. She said she never would have pointed to Christopher. She said she had no memory of nodding. And here's the thing, maybe she didn't. That kind of brain trauma can do things to memory that doctors still don't fully understand. It's possible she genuinely remembered nothing. But it's also possible that lying in that hospital bed, still alive when she maybe shouldn't have been, Joan Porco made a decision. Nobody knows which one it was, and Joan has never said. The police started with the obvious question: who would do this to Peter and Joan Porco? They found out about the two sons pretty quickly. Jonathan, the older one, was easy to rule out. He was serving on a nuclear submarine at the time, thousands of miles away. Solid alibi. That left Christopher, and the more they looked at Christopher, the more things stopped adding up. His story was that he'd been asleep in the lounge at his dormitory all night. Monroe House. Said he woke up the next morning and found out about his parents from a reporter who called him. So the police started asking around campus. Had anyone seen Christopher that night? Had anyone seen him sleeping in that lounge? Nobody had. And then they pulled the security footage. 4 cameras, 10:30 at night. A bright yellow Jeep Wrangler pulling out of the parking lot. The toll booth receipts outside Rochester. Cash, no easy pass. The toll collector in Albany just before 2 in the morning who remembered the yellow Jeep coming through fast. And then at 8:30 the next morning, the same yellow Jeep back in the university parking lot. Just before news of the attack broke, 232 miles there, 232 miles back, the whole night unaccounted for. They looked at the house on Brockley Drive again. The burglar alarm had been turned off using the family's own security code. Not forced, not hacked. And a couple of hours later, the phone line outside had been cut. And there was one more thing. A camera had gone missing from inside the house. Looked like a burglary. Things out of place. Drawers open. But investigators found the camera in the front yard. Like it had been thrown there, like someone wanted it to look like a burglary without really thinking it through. Christopher's story had more holes in it than he probably realized, and the police were just getting started. Christopher Porco was arrested in 2005. The trial was moved out of Albany, too much media coverage, too many people who'd already made up their minds. They held it in Goshen, Orange County, about 2 hours south. Took 21 days. The evidence came in piece by piece. The toll booth footage, the security cameras, the forged loans, the emails, the alarm code, the phone line, all of it laid out in front of the jury. And Joan came to court not to testify against her son. She maintained she remembered nothing, that she never would have pointed to Christopher. But she showed up, sat there in the courtroom, supporting him, a mother who had lost an eye, part of her skull, who would carry the scars of that night for the rest of her life, sitting a few rows behind the man accused of doing it to her. Whatever you make of that, and people make a lot of different things of it, it's hard to look away from. On August 10th, 2006, the jury came back, guilty of second-degree murder, guilty of attempted murder. Christopher Porco was 23 years old. The judge sentenced him to 25 years to life on each count. He won't be eligible for parole until 2052. The judge said something at sentencing that stuck with people. He said, I fear very much that what happened in the early morning hours of November 15th is something that could happen again. Christopher has maintained his innocence ever since. He's still in prison. Joan still visits him. And that check Peter wrote that morning, made out to Christopher for a parking ticket, it was still sitting on the kitchen counter when the police arrived. He never got to send it. And that is the story of Peter and Joan Porco, a man struck with an axe 16 times during the night, who got up the next morning and made his lunch, a mother who lost an eye, who still visits her son in prison, and a check made out to Christopher for a parking ticket, still sitting on the kitchen counter when the police arrived. He never got to send it. I hope you enjoyed it, friends. If you like this one, go check out my other stories. I've got plenty more waiting for you, and if you did, leave a like, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you around the campfire.